What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses faces off against a talk show host who's clearly having the worst night of his career? Well, you're about to find out, because what went down between Emilia Clarke and Stephen Colbert during what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable television moments in recent memory. Before we dive into this absolute train wreck, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because, trust me, you're going to have thoughts about this one. So picture this. Emilia Clarke walks onto the Late Show set looking absolutely radiant, wearing this gorgeous emerald green dress that perfectly complements her eyes. And she's got that trademark smile that made millions fall in love with Daenerys. The audience is already eating it up, giving her this massive round of applause, and you can just feel the positive energy in the room. She waves to the crowd, takes her seat next to Colbert's desk, and everything seems perfectly normal. The cameras are rolling, the audience is excited, and Colbert starts with what appears to be standard pleasantries. But here's where things get weird, right from the start. Instead of the usual warm welcome we're used to seeing from Colbert, there's this underlying tension in his voice. He's got this forced smile plastered on his face, but his eyes tell a completely different story. Something is clearly bothering him, and unfortunately for Emilia, she's about to become the target of whatever personal issues he's dealing with that night. Colbert begins with what seems like a compliment, telling Emilia how wonderful she looks, and how excited the audience is to see her. She responds with genuine warmth, thanking him and expressing how happy she is to be there. But then, completely out of nowhere, Colbert makes this backhanded comment about how it must be nice to have a career built on playing such a simple character. The words hang in the air for a moment, and you can actually see Emilia's face change as she processes what he just said now. Anyone who knows anything about Emilia Clarke's work knows that calling Daenerys Targaryen a simple character is not just wrong, it's insulting. This is a character that evolved from a frightened young girl into a complex leader dealing with power, morality, and the burden of responsibility. Emilia spent years bringing depth and nuance to that role, and she's spoken many times about how much thought and preparation went into every scene. Emilia handles it with grace initially, laughing it off and explaining how Daenerys was actually one of the most complex characters she's ever had the privilege of playing. She starts talking about the character's journey, her internal struggles, and the incredible writing that went into developing her arc. Her passion for the work is evident, and she's trying to educate rather than defend herself. But Colbert isn't. Having it, instead of acknowledging her insight or moving on to another topic, he doubles down. He interrupts her mid-sentence and makes another dismissive comment about how fantasy shows are just escapism for people who can't handle real drama. The audience starts to shift uncomfortably in their seats because this isn't the Stephen Colbert they know and love. This version is snippy, condescending, and frankly, pretty unpleasant to watch. Emilia's professionalism is remarkable at this point. She maintains her composure and tries to redirect the conversation, mentioning her upcoming projects and expressing excitement about working in different genres. She's clearly trying to save the interview and give the audience something positive to focus on, but Colbert seems determined to make this as uncomfortable as possible. He starts questioning her acting range, suggesting that maybe she's been typecast and wondering aloud if she can actually handle more demanding roles. These aren't the kind of questions you ask a guest, especially not someone with Emilia's credentials and reputation. These are the kinds of things you might think privately, but any professional host would never voice them in such a confrontational way. The worst part is watching Emilia's face as she realizes this isn't going to get better. You can see the exact moment when she understands that this isn't just an awkward question or a poorly worded comment. This is a deliberate pattern of hostility, and she's going to have to decide how to respond. Her media training is kicking in, but you can tell she's genuinely hurt by the unprovoked attacks on her work and her abilities. The audience is getting more uncomfortable by the minute. People are looking around at each other with confused expressions, and the usual energy of a late-night talk show is completely gone. Instead, there's this thick tension that everyone can feel, and it's becoming increasingly clear that something needs to change before this gets even worse. What happens next is where things really start to spiral out of control, and honestly, it's painful to watch. Colbert, seemingly oblivious to how badly this is going, or maybe just not caring anymore, decides to bring up Game of Thrones' controversial final season. Now, this is already dangerous territory, because everyone knows how passionate fans are about that topic, and bringing it up in a hostile way is just asking for trouble. But instead of approaching it with any kind of sensitivity or understanding, Colbert goes straight for the throat. He starts by saying something about how the show's ending disappointed millions of people, which, okay, that's fair game for discussion. But then he looks directly at Emilia and suggests that maybe the actors just weren't talented enough to sell the material they were given. The words come out of his mouth with this casual cruelty that's honestly shocking to witness. You can see Emilia's jaw tighten slightly, and her hands grip the armrests of her chair just a little bit harder. Now, anyone who followed the final season knows that the cast, including Emilia, defended the writers and the storylines publicly even when fans were upset. They showed incredible loyalty to the project and the people they worked with for nearly a decade. For Colbert to suggest that the actors were somehow at fault for fan disappointment is not just unfair, it's completely ignorant of how television production actually works. Emilia takes a deep breath and responds with remarkable restraint. She explains that the cast gave everything they had to those final episodes, that everyone involved was deeply committed to honoring the characters and the story, and that she's proud of the work they did. Her voice is steady, but you can hear the emotion underneath. She's not just defending herself, she's defending her colleagues, her friends, people she spent years working alongside. But Colbert isn't done. He interrupts her again, something he's been doing consistently throughout this disaster of an interview, and makes this comment about how, maybe if the actors had spoken up about the writing earlier, things might have turned out differently. It's such an ignorant statement, because it completely misunderstands how the entertainment industry works. Actors don't typically have control over writing decisions, especially on a show as massive and complex as Game of Thrones. Emilia's professionalism starts to crack just slightly here. She sits up straighter in her chair, and her voice gets a little firmer as she explains that the actors trusted the writers who had been crafting this world for years, and that questioning the creative decisions wasn't their role. She points out that the writers had earned that trust through 7 incredible seasons, and that the cast respected the process. The audience is now visibly uncomfortable. People are shifting in their seats, some are looking down at their phones, and others are just staring at the stage with this mixture of confusion and second-hand embarrassment. This isn't entertainment anymore. This is just watching someone be unnecessarily cruel to a guest who came on the show to promote her work and have a good time. Colbert then makes what might be the most insulting comment of the entire interview. He suggests that Emilia's emotional reaction to discussing the final season proves that even she knows the performances weren't up to par. It's such a twisted interpretation of her professionalism and loyalty that you can actually see her face change completely. The polite smile disappears, her eyes narrow slightly, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she looks genuinely angry. She responds with ice in her voice, explaining that her emotion comes from caring deeply about the work and the people involved, not from any lack of confidence in the performances. She mentions the incredible dedication of the entire cast and crew, the physical and emotional demands of those final episodes, and the pride she feels in what they accomplished together. Her words are measured and controlled, but they're steel. Underneath them now, the host seems to realize he's pushed too far. But instead of backing down or apologizing, he tries to make it seem like he was just playing devil's advocate. He attempts this weak laugh and says something about how he's just asking the tough questions that fans want answered. It's such a transparent attempt to cover for his behavior, and it makes everything even more uncomfortable because now he's trying to blame his hostility on the audience. Emilia doesn't buy it for a second. She points out that there's a difference between asking challenging questions and making personal attacks on someone's professional abilities. Her voice is still controlled, but there's no mistaking the fact that she's had enough of this treatment. She mentions that she came on the show expecting a conversation, not an ambush, and that she's answered his questions with honesty and respect despite their tone. The cameras keep rolling, but you can see the production staff in the background, starting to look concerned. Someone off-camera makes a gesture that suggests they might want to cut to commercial, but Colbert waves them off. He's either completely oblivious to how badly this is going, or he's decided to lean into the chaos. completely. Then he makes another critical mistake. He brings up Emilia's health struggles, specifically the brain aneurysms she suffered during the early seasons of Game of Thrones. But instead of approaching this incredibly personal and serious topic with sensitivity, he suggests that maybe the health issues affected her performance in later seasons. The words come out of his mouth, and the entire studio seems to freeze. This is the moment where any reasonable person watching knows that a line has been crossed. Emilia's health struggles were life-threatening, traumatic experiences that she bravely shared with the public to help others facing similar challenges. To suggest that they somehow diminished her professional abilities is not just insensitive, it's cruel on a level that's hard to comprehend. Emilia's response is quiet but deadly. She explains that her health challenges actually made her more determined to give her best performance, that the experience of facing mortality gave her a deeper understanding of life and strength that she brought to her work. She speaks about the incredible medical team that helped her, the support she received from colleagues, and how the experience ultimately made her a better actor and a stronger person. Colbert, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of what he's done, tries to backtrack. He mumbles something about not meaning to suggest that her health affected her work, but the damage is already done. His attempt at clarification only makes it worse because it's obvious. He's scrambling to cover his tracks rather than offering a genuine apology. The audience is now completely silent, except for occasional uncomfortable coughs and the rustling of people shifting in their seats. The energy in the room has gone from excited to confused to horrified. And everyone can sense that this interview is heading towards some kind of breaking point. Emilia sits back in her chair, and you can see her making a decision about how to handle what's happening. The silence that follows is deafening, and you can practically feel the entire studio holding its breath. Emilia sits there for what feels like an eternity, just looking at Colbert with this expression that's equal parts disappointment and disbelief. Her hands are folded in her lap now, and she's got this incredibly calm demeanor that somehow feels more powerful than any angry outburst could have been. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet, but carries this weight that makes everyone in the room lean forward to hear what she's going to say. She starts by saying that she's been in this industry for over a decade, and she's sat through hundreds of interviews with hosts from all over the world. She mentions that she's always tried to be gracious and professional, even when questions were difficult or uncomfortable, because she understands that's part of the job. But then she pauses, looks directly into the camera instead of at Colbert, and says that what's happening right now isn't journalism or entertainment. It's just cruelty disguised as conversation. The camera catches Colbert's face during this moment, and you can see him starting to realize that he's lost control of the situation completely. He tries to interrupt her with some kind of weak protest, but Emilia holds up her hand in a gesture that's both polite and absolutely final. She's not raising her voice, she's not being dramatic, but there's something in her tone that makes it clear. She's going to finish what she has to say. She continues by explaining that she came on the show tonight, excited to talk about her new projects, to share some fun stories with the audience, and to hopefully give people a reason to smile during their evening. Instead, she's been subjected to what she calls a systematic attempt to undermine her work, her health journey, and her character. She points out that this isn't what late-night television is supposed to be about, and it's certainly not what the audience deserves to witness. Colbert finally manages to get a word in, and he tries to frame the entire situation as a misunderstanding. He claims that his questions were taken out of context and that he was simply trying to have a robust discussion about her career. But his explanation falls completely flat, because everyone in that room, including the home audience, has just witnessed 20 minutes of increasingly hostile behavior that can't be explained away as miscommunication. Emilia responds to his explanation with what might be the most devastating politeness you've ever heard. She thanks him for clarifying his intentions, but then she systematically breaks down each of his comments, explaining how they weren't questions designed to create discussion, but statements meant to diminish and attack. She does this without raising her voice, without using harsh language, and without losing her composure for even a second. It's like watching a masterclass in how to dismantle someone's argument while maintaining complete dignity. The audience is now completely captivated by what's happening. The uncomfortable energy from earlier has transformed into something else entirely. People are watching Emilia handle this situation with such grace and intelligence that she's actually won them over completely. You can see folks in the audience nodding along with her words, and there are even a few people who look like they want to applaud her response. Colbert, meanwhile, is starting to look increasingly desperate. He's realizing that his attempts to control the narrative are failing spectacularly, and that Emilia has not only called out his behavior, but done so in a way that makes him look even worse. He tries another approach, suggesting that maybe they should start over and focus on her upcoming projects, like they originally planned. But Emilia shakes her head with this sad smile that somehow conveys more disappointment than anger ever could. She explains that the damage has already been done, not just to her personally, but to the trust that should exist between a host and their guests. She mentions that other actors will probably hear about this interview, and it might make them think twice about appearing on the show in the future. She's not threatening him, she's just stating a fact about the consequences of his actions. Then she does something that nobody sees coming. She stands up from her chair, smooths down her dress, and thanks the audience for their time and attention. She tells them that she hopes they have a wonderful rest of their evening, and that she's sorry they had to witness what happened instead of getting the entertaining show they deserved. The sincerity in her voice is unmistakable, and you can see people in the audience looking genuinely moved by her words. Colbert jumps up from behind his desk, clearly panicking now because he knows this is going to be a disaster for his show and his reputation. He starts talking rapidly, trying to convince her to sit back down, suggesting they can edit out the difficult parts and start fresh. But his desperation is obvious, and it only serves to highlight how professional and composed Emilia has remained throughout this entire ordeal. She turns to face him one last time, and what she says next is delivered with such quiet authority that it's absolutely chilling. She tells him that she spent her career working with some of the most talented and professional people in the entertainment industry, and that she's learned that how someone treats others when they think they have power over them reveals everything you need to know about their character. She says that tonight has been very revealing indeed. The studio is so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Emilia walks toward the edge of the stage, and you can see the production staff scrambling to figure out what to do. Some of them look like they want to stop her, others seem to be signaling to cut the cameras. But nobody quite knows how to handle a situation like this because it's so unprecedented. Just before she reaches the steps that lead off the stage, Emilia turns back to the audience one more time. She gives them that brilliant smile that made her famous, waves goodbye, and tells them to take care of themselves. It's such a stark contrast to the tension that's been building throughout the interview, and it serves as a perfect reminder of the warmth and charisma that made her a beloved figure in the first place. As she walks up the steps and disappears backstage, Colbert is left standing alone on his set, facing an audience that's now looking at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disapproval. He tries to make some kind of joke about the situation, but it falls completely flat. The audience doesn't laugh, they don't applaud, they just sit there in stunned silence, processing what they've just witnessed. The cameras keep rolling for another few seconds, capturing Colbert's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage the moment. But it's clear that there's no coming back from what just happened. The interview that was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance has turned into a defining moment that reveals the true character of everyone involved. What did you think about Emilia Clarke's response to this hostile interview? Was she right to walk off, or should she have stayed and tried to work through it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe for more stories about the moments when Hollywood's biggest stars show us who they really are. The cameras are rolling, and the pressure is on.